if you have money and you just chase materialistic things in your life, and that's one thing I did. I thought, if I can just earn £10,000 a month, if I can get a nice car, if I can get a nice house, bring yourself to the realization that you're not going to have all the deep underlying happiness that you desire in your life just by filling those materialistic things.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bang for Your Business with me, Lucas Hamby, and James Benet. James, how you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Lucas.
Today we've got a really exciting guest. I would like to say friend as well, Jordan Platten, who has created some extremely successful businesses, a very successful social media marketing agency. Yeah, he then went on to create an extremely successful and pivotal course that has taught thousands of people how to create very successful agencies and businesses. Jordan, how are you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me on today.
No problem at all. So we want to delve a little bit deeper than some of the things that are out of you online. There's a lot of information out. You've done a lot of things like this before. So we're going to try and ask some questions that you may not have been asked previously. But just for the context first, could you tell us a little bit about the business and its history?
Of course. So we've kind of got two segments to our business. Number one, we have a kind of fully fledged marketing agency. We specialize in Facebook ads. We launched around 2.5 years ago. I was working in corporate sales beforehand, but I was actually selling advertisement packages in the jobs that I was working in. And I was doing pretty well, if I may say, for like a 21-year-old guy, but I had this kind of desire. I always thought like money was like my driving force in business. And when I started earning okay money in corporate sales, I realized that wasn't the case. And it was actually the freedom side of things. And so I launched this marketing agency kind of completely in the dark. I signed up my first client without even knowing how to fulfill the service, which I would not recommend people to do. But that was my position. I was so desperate to get out and do that. And we had quite a lot of early on success in that marketing agency because of the experience I had in sales. And I noticed that people started coming to me for advice, and it kind of paved the way, opened up for this secondary business that we launched, which was this education business. And we launched a training program actually helping other agency owners or aspiring agency owners to scale their business and to sell and to fulfill services and all of that stuff, kind of a full package there. So then businesses both work kind of very closely in tandem with each other.
And you've built quite a close community with a loyal, engaged following. With the Affluent Academy. It goes further than an online course we've seen, but what advice would you give someone looking to create a successful online course?
I think the most important thing with it, the biggest thing is what comes down to your core within the business. Okay, it's like, what's the motivator behind someone in those businesses? There's so much noise in the online education space or any kind of education business. And that's because the majority of people who start these companies are just doing it just for financial gain. Whereas when I started this out, I genuinely only started out to provide value to people. So I started a YouTube channel. I built that YouTube and I set out, my motto was always, I want to give more away for free than other people will have you pay for. And I started creating videos that literally just weren't out there. People weren't putting this information out there unless you wanted to pay for it. And so I paved the way by always leaning forward with value. And I think that has allowed me to be able to sell so well and to be able to build so much trust within my audience, because they know that I will give them more for free than they will pay for elsewhere. So I think if anybody's looking in to start any business along that level, any kind of info-based business, just always push forward with value first and don't start selling to your audience until you've built a very loyal following.
Yeah.
I think as well, it's, a lot of businesses started from someone that's passionate about something, and it's something that you may not even be able to monetize at first, but then through that hard work and through, being passionate about that core belief, you're able to eventually monetize it because of that.
100%. I mean, I think the only reason I started in the first place was my whole premise of when I was younger, when I was like 16, 17, 18, I always used to say to myself, like, I'm so desperate to be successful. I used to think all the time and preach it to friends. I'm so desperate to be successful, but I don't know anyone who can help me get to that place. Like, I had no vehicle. I always thought this, like, okay, you need to think of the next idea. It needs to be Airbnb. It needs to be Uber. It needs to be some kind of innovative idea which no one's thought of yet. That's how you be successful. And then I thought once about how restaurants are everywhere around me and how there's new restaurants starting up all the time and they do something a little bit different and they can still have success. And so for me, it was like, I needed somebody to be able to pave the way for me. I need somebody to be able to say, hey, look, there's opportunity out there other than just starting out something brand new. You can use existing business models and replicate them and make them better. And so I always wanted to be that person for myself 10 years ago. I want to be that person for other people. And so that's always been my passion. It's been helping other entrepreneurs be successful. And I think if I didn't have that passion, I wouldn't be able to get a business anywhere near it is today.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, entrepreneurship now is a lot more popular and cool than it maybe once was. And, you know, being a social media marketing agency owner as well, I think, you know, you were one of the reasons this has happened, but it's now a lot more people doing it, a lot more people in the space. I mean, just quickly on that point that you said, you don't need to invent the next Uber, but how do you stand out as a social media marketing agency owner today then?
I think the key thing is detaching yourself from, I think a lot of people think when they start a company, like, so the first thing someone does is go and get a business card and they go make their website and they go like do all these things that make them feel more important than they actually are, because it gives you this kind of sense of presence. But actually, the most successful marketing agencies out there, or at least any service-based industry, this doesn't just stand for marketing, is when you have that human element. It's when you have that personal interaction with somebody else. And when you really strip back the belief of, hey, I'm just one person going to another person and I'm trying to help them improve their life or help them improve their business or help them become more successful. And when you strip it all back and treat it as just one human versus one human having a proper conversation about helping each other, then you will be a lot more successful. And so it's just like, for example, if you're advertising for your marketing agency, I would never recommend somebody advertising their agency. Recommend advertising yourself, because you're the person that somebody's going to be working with. You're the person that's going to handle that account. So it's having that personal touch, which I think is really key in 2020 and beyond within businesses. It's not worrying about trying to look like this big corporation with loads of companies. People want to work with people one-on-one.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was very interested in your comment earlier on. I just wanted to touch back on it, actually.
Yeah.
Your definition of success. And you're talking about it's not financial, it's freedom. Yeah. What does that mean to you? What does that give you personally?
Yeah, I think the key is the key is to take from that. It's like, I always say money doesn't buy freedom. Money doesn't buy happiness. Money buys freedom, and freedom buys happiness. Because and don't get me wrong, like, I love money. I love having money. I like earning money. Because I love what money does, and I love what money does, enables you to do and bring happiness to people all around you, and all of that stuff. But not going into that, I think that if you have money and you just chase materialistic things in your life, and that's one thing I did. I thought, if I can just earn £10,000 a month, if I can get a nice car, if I can get a nice house, then I'll be happy. But you find yourself being very unfilled unless you are surrounded with people who are on the exact same level with you. But what you find is when you start having success is the people around you, generally speaking, when you're first starting off, aren't on that level with you. And so it takes a long time for you to bring people with you, or at least bring yourself to the realization that you're not going to have all the deep underlying happiness that you desire in your life just by filling those materialistic things. Like, if you're successful and you're spending Monday to Friday and you're working and your friends are in a 9 till 5 and you have the capacity to be able to do whatever you want and they can't, you're going to be left unfulfilled, that you can't do things with those people, or you can't spend time with your family, spend time with your friends. And so for me, it's always been about this greater vision now. It's always been about, how can I help people, and not just help people on a financial level, but I help other people find freedom. So then when I'm successful and the people around me are successful, I can actually enjoy that freedom with those people. So sorry, that was a bit of a roundabout answer, but it's like a really hard concept to explain. That's like, it's not about, like, so many people initially chase money as like, this is the one thing that I need, but it's what money brings to you, which you should be chasing.
And and you've spoken a lot about this, but it's that, you know, if you're just chasing the money, it's that you're just chasing that dopamine hit almost, that you're buying that nice thing, you know, you've hit that goal of, I'm buying this nice thing, and you're just getting that kind of release of dopamine. But then it's like that keeps going, and then it gets to a stage where you can't then, you know, fulfill that next point.
It's like cars. You get a nice car, you got a fast car, you're driving down the road, and you'll never lose the love for that adrenaline when you're driving down the road and you hear that engine, but you're always thinking about the next car after you've got one.
Exactly. It's that amazing feeling for a couple of weeks, and then suddenly you get used to it. Yeah. I'm sure you do, driving your Porsches a daily. And then it's like, what's next? But
when's the Ferrari 458 coming?
Exactly. Then when's the Lambo and so on.
The search for the new car starts when you take delivery of the current car.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
So you've been very vocal about online course culture and fake gurus. You know, we've made a film about it. Find it on Jordan Platten's YouTube channel. But what advice, you know, could you explain this in a little bit more detail about this kind of course culture and how Affluent Academy are helping to combat it?
it's a very dangerous, almost dangerous industry, that the online course industry, or even just the info product industry, because I think what people have realized is that you don't need any experience, pretty much, and you don't need much know-how, you don't need any money to invest to make a lot of cash very, very, very quickly. It's like almost the modern day gold rush online. And I think people realize that. And I think people also recognize the fact that when you're online, perception is a really strange thing. You can be anyone you want to be to anyone online because they don't know who you are. And that also opens you up to being a liar, that opens you up to be a scammer, because there is nothing, even you guys right now, there's nothing stopping me coming on this podcast apart from the fact that I'm very public and say I'm a new person, you've never heard of me before. I could technically say to you anything I want to say to you and you will trust in what I'm saying, unless there's nothing that backs it up online. And so that's a really dangerous thing in the hands of the wrong people. And so what we've made sure we want to do is we want to sieve away from all of that. We want to get ourselves away from that. We don't want to be associated with this online course guru culture. I'm not a guru. I wouldn't call myself a guru. And so I have the mentality that if you're starting an online training program, or if you're taking an online training program, somebody is buying into getting a certain result, whatever that course is, whatever it teaches you. It doesn't matter if it's social media marketing or whether it's how to get fit. If you want to get a certain result and you're paying someone for that result, you should be guaranteed that result. If you went to a personal trainer and you said, I want to lose weight over the next 3 months, they said, okay, look, this is the diet plan, this is the workout plan. We're going to do this and you're going to lose weight over the next 3 months. If you don't lose weight after those 3 months, and you've followed all the workout plan, all the diet plan, you're going to be pretty pissed off and you're going to want your money back. That person should not be entitled to your money. So why is it okay in online training for you to take a course, for them to say, hey, you're going to make 6 figures in 3 months. You're going to start this Amazon business and you're going to make all this money. You follow all the steps, you put in all the work, you waste all of your time and you don't have that success. Why is it then okay for that company to then take your money still? It's not like, it shouldn't be legal to do that. It's false advertising, and I think it's a matter of time, in my personal opinion, that there is regulation coming to this industry. I do think that, at least in the UK and the US, I do think there'll be heavy regulation on this. And I want to be ahead of that curve. And that's why we guarantee people success. Because if we're confident in teaching somebody to be successful, if we know that our strategies work, then let's put money to it. Let's say if you do this and you follow our steps, you follow our sales strategy over the next 3 months or over the next 30 days, and you sign a client, if you don't do that, you'll get your money back. And to this date, we still have a 1% refund rate, less than that.
Wow.
Fantastic. You've had a lot of success at a young age over quite a short space of time. How do you stay humble and how do you stay focused on your goals?
I've never been asked that question. That's a good question. How do I stay humble? I think you have to remind yourself of where you've been and where you've come from, and also where you're going, because I still consider myself very much in my infancy. As to the greater scheme of what I want to achieve out of my life. And I also had to remind myself that if I said to myself 3 years ago when I'd just been kicked out, well, actually 4 years ago now when I got kicked out of university, if I said to myself at this point right now, this is where you're going to be in your life, this is the position you'll be in, I would just be like, it wouldn't even be on my belief spectrum. Like, I wouldn't even think I was capable of that. And so when I remind myself of that, I have no other choice than to stay humble. And I think you also have to remember that with people around you, and this is a really key thing with being humble, when people around you, like your friends and your family and everyone like that, you have to be very careful about what you talk about and how you talk about your success and how you talk about what you want to achieve out of your life. Because you also have to accept that entrepreneurship is not for everybody, and the desire for financial wealth or for financial freedom or whatever that may be is not within everyone. And so you have to make sure that you're careful of who you speak to about these certain things, because you don't want to rub off the wrong way with friends and stuff, because there's a lot of jealousy that happens when you become successful, and there's a lot of that. And I think that you need to remind yourself that not everybody wants the same things in life, and that's perfectly okay at the same time.
I think it's about having friends around. Sorry, Lucas.
No, I was just going to say on that point, it's quite dangerous in a way, because entrepreneurship now is such a cool thing almost, and everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Like you just said there, people are going into it for the wrong reasons, and they don't have those genes. They're not kind of made to be necessarily an entrepreneur, and they want to be. And as a result, there's catastrophic effects of that in their lives. But, like you said, it's about finding your purpose. It's not necessarily, I should be, the right thing to do is to be your own boss, because some of the most successful people in the world are a number 2 or a number 3 in a company. So, that isn't really important to do that if that's not your purpose.
No, of course. And Johnny Ives, the chief design officer or chief design director, don't know his official title in Apple, gets paid more than Tim Cook, who's the CEO. So,
yeah.
I was going to mention, you talked about friends and family. Having your friends and family around you, I'm sure, helps you stay grounded.
Yeah.
Giving you that, people that you can bounce things off, people that you can bring you back down to where you are. Definitely. And come on, mate.
I've had that conversation. I've had that conversation when I've gone a little bit far of a conversation, got a little bit big-headed, things have got to your head, and it's like someone said to me, Jordan, check in with yourself for a minute. Come on, you got to remember who you are, where you've come from, and who's helped you before you were nothing.
And that's what your friends are for.
Exactly. 100%.
Amongst many other things.
Get off your high horse, mate. Come on.
Go on, mate. Remember us.
So what advice do you have for business owners that are struggling to, consistently stay motivated?
I think the key thing is your surroundings. I think you have to surround yourself, at least being part of it. That's why I think things like online training programs are really great. Even if the training itself isn't that fantastic, it's normally the communities which are the most valuable part of any of those. I joined quite a few communities when I first started. And to be honest, I knew most of the stuff that I'd taken the training on because I'd worked in sales before. But it was those communities where I really cemented myself in this industry. It was like I was providing more value in the communities than some of the course owners were because they were really busy running their businesses. And so people started coming to me. And I think it's having that surrounding, it's having those people. When you see somebody post in a group and they're like, oh, I've just signed up a new client today. You're like, oh, man, what? Why? What? They started a week ago and I started a month ago. I need to give myself the kick up the arse. And so I think having people around you who are on the same journey as you is really, really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that thing, isn't it? Is it your product of the 5 closest? It's something like that.
I always used to be like, okay, that doesn't mean anything. That's just what people say. But that is so true.
It's so true.
It's more so like I try and surround myself now with people who are so much further ahead than me. So it reminds me, like, come on, like you can't just take 2 weeks off and start technically speaking, you could just spend a couple of weeks just not doing much and just enjoying it. But then you also have to remind yourself of where you want to go to. And by surrounding yourselves with people who look at you as if like you sound here, mate.
Yeah,
it's good.
You've talked about the current situation, the pandemic, as whilst it's been challenging for some, you've talked about as being an opportunity. How have your clients changed their strategies going into lockdown, and how are they changing now we're hopefully coming back out?
No, that's a good question. I saw this statistic, and I don't know whether this is exactly true or not, but I heard that in the last 2 months alone, e-commerce industries have moved forward 10 years, like something like 10 times quicker within that last, or like they've progressed 10 years or something along them lines. Don't quote me on that. I shouldn't even reference that. It's like such an unofficial fact. But I've noticed so much that all of the clients I've worked with who weren't working online now have this deep desire to they're like, I need to be online. And even the ones that haven't been selling in this time, it's been that final kick up the arse to actually start working on some kind of online based model, or at least convert their business model. And that's been amazing to see. But also, I mean, we've worked with clients in this pandemic who have been, fortunately enough, in the niches or in the industries which have benefited from this, who, for example, garden furniture, and they're selling garden furniture online. And we've literally made them £85 for every £1 they've spent with us. And they've been spending £5,000 a month plus. Huge return on investment that they never even expected. I think they've done more in the last month than they would have done in the last year, which is crazy. They did just under £1 million on garden furniture. And I think that lots of companies are watching this happen. They're seeing all these other companies boom from this, and they're realizing that they can't sit on e-commerce any longer. They can't wait on online business models. But I've even seen like local brick and mortar companies like dentists who have been taking pre-bookings for when people are coming out of the pandemic, because they realize that if somebody's really conscious of their teeth, they need to get work done, they want to do teeth whitening, or they want to get their fillings taken out or whatever, they're going to be looking in the mirror more than ever because they're at home, right? They're going to be, they're just at home looking at themselves, and they're thinking that when I get out of here, I want to do that. You got to look at all the women in the world right now in the UK. They think, I need to get my hair done.
Yeah, I've heard it enough.
I need to get it done. I've been getting it like every day. And so it's like, they're thinking these hairdressers are booked up well in advance, and the ones that are forward thinking are the ones that made them bookings, ran advertisements during this pandemic. And I think that there's going to be a huge shift in the mentality of business owners because of this.
I think it's just really sped up a lot of things that were happening that companies were probably caught in their tracks, not moving quick enough with the way that the kind of market was moving. You know, e-commerce, a lot of brick and mortar businesses that should have had an e-commerce site on their, and kind of moving in that direction may not have necessarily had that, but the situation we found ourselves in has pushed them into that. You know, when they may not have previously done that.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more.
So following on from that, what would you say is your biggest mistake or failure, and kind of, you know, what have you learned from that and how have you overcome that?
That's a good question. In my businesses.
Yeah, or even in life, since you've been an entrepreneur, you know.
I would say that my biggest, actually one of my biggest failures, and also one of the things I'm really grateful for happening, is it comes back to being the humble thing. I hosted an event in London once. I'd done a physical speaking event, one of my first ever events, and it went really, really well. We massive turnout, and we made a lot of revenue from it. It was so successful, and I thought, right, if I can do London, now I'm the big boy. I'm going to go to New York and host an event in New York. I went to New York, arranged this thing. We hired this auditorium, this big event. We were going to pack it out, and I lost around £30,000 cash from doing it because I had this arrogance that I could replicate anything I could do on the other side of the world, and I was just going to make a success of it. And I lost the most money I've ever lost in my business, and it was just, at the time, it was just, I was so bummed out over it. But now I'm so grateful that happened, because it was such a massive lesson for me to realize that you're not untouchable. You can't just take something, and you're not the king, and and I think that anybody who has success, especially a lot of people, and this is a dangerous thing for young people, a lot of people having success young and early on, especially if it's online, because I think we sometimes forget how lucky we are to be able to have the access to the internet. Because if I was starting a physical brick and mortar company right now, there was no way I would be in a position that I'm in right now in the same time span.
Yeah. You know, staying comfortable, being comfortable in business is not necessarily a good thing. So you having that situation showed you that you weren't comfortable, that you weren't indestructible. And, you know, I think when we aren't comfortable, that's when we work our best almost. Yeah.
100%. It makes you change. It makes you want to adapt everything that you're doing. And I think it was a massive kick up the arse for me to just say, look, you need to bring yourself back down to earth and accept that. I mean, I'm going to New York City where there's people who are 100 times larger than me that would somebody who books an event on the same day as me, it would destroy every attendee that I would have coming to my event. And I think it was that humble realization that you need to take things slow. Just because you've had quick success doesn't mean that everything you touch is going to be successful.
Yeah, it's really good to learn from your mistakes, isn't it? That's great.
And that's the key, learning from them and not making them again.
Yeah, exactly.
I know you live alone, you run your business, slightly taboo subject, but loneliness is an issue for a lot of business owners. How do you deal with that yourself?
Great question. I first moved in on my own about a year into launching my business. So before that, I started my business out of my friend's bedroom. So I had a little desk set up in the bedroom, and it was about a year into launching my business. And to start off with, it was really weird. It was a really kind of surreal feeling. And I think in entrepreneurship in general, even when you're living with other people, sometimes it can be a really lonely space, because people won't always have the same mentality as you will, or have the same desires for what you do. And you can often find that certain friends you'll speak to and they'll zone out when you're talking about it. Like, oh, here we go again. All he's talking about is the business and the company. And so it can be a really lonely pace. And I think the key thing is, the thing that's always pushed me forward with that, is keeping people around me in those communities and stuff that, for example, which I mentioned earlier, it's keeping people who I know on the same journey as me. I was very fortunate to have a friend who actually quit his 9-to-5 job about literally 2 weeks before I did. And he started in a very similar industry of me, actually just worked doing Amazon fulfillment by Amazon. And I was very fortunate to have him at that time, because he was just starting out as well. He was having the same struggles. He was having the same pressure from his family and friends to be successful. He had that I think one of the most horrible things when you're starting off is knowing that how many people there are who would find pleasure in the fact that you would fail. And I think there's so many people around you that kind of say, oh, I want you to do well, but deep down they're kind of thinking they're not really rooting for it. And so you have all these pressures as an entrepreneur, especially when you're on your own, you're living on your own. It can be a very, very lonely place. But I think confiding in somebody who's on that same journey as you is really, really important. Without that, I wouldn't be able to keep the mental state that I've been able to keep over the last couple of years.
So did you consciously then decide, make the decision when you started your business that you were going to live alone, that you weren't going to necessarily live with friends or whoever it may be? Was that in terms of distractions, is that something you kind of thought about?
Yeah, I mean, at the start of my first year in business was very much because it was like we'd made our first bit of money, and I think that I took quite a lot of time off. I went on a lot of holidays. And I was taking that midweek time off because I was like, I wasn't used to being able to make Wednesday a Saturday. And so I think I had that. But then after that first year, it was kind of that I now thought, right, I need to really get graft. And it was when we were actually building out the Affluent Academy, like our rebrand of that. And I knew that I'd be having to do some very long days. I remember I went through this stint of about 3 months doing 16-hour days for 3 months straight. And that was miserable. That was miserable work. It was like waking up, working out, working all day. And you found yourself literally just being a robot. So I think that I made the active decision to live alone because I knew I'd have to get myself into that state. But I don't think it's detrimental to your business that you have to be alone. There's people who have families, kids, and I think it's all about finding that balance. I think that, yes, it's going to push you forward quicker if you're able to get focused on your own. But I don't think it's detrimental to your business if you're not living on your own.
On that note, then you said that pivotal you mentioned about when you in your first year you kind of struggled. Well, not struggled, but you found that you had more free time. You could make a Wednesday a Saturday. What was the pivotal moment for you where you realized actually, that flexibility needs to be reined in a little bit?
It was more so, I was kind of like, it was almost a too good to be true moment. It was like, I think actually one of the times I remember, which is really prominent for that, was I just bought, I think I had a BMW M4, and I was spending a content day with Joe, who's now actually a director in my agency, he owns 50% of the agency now. But he, at the time, was he'd just come out of Team GB skiing. He'd hurt his back and he started going into videography. And he reached out to me because he wanted to make this YouTube intro for me. We drove around the coast, we were in the M4, and we were like driving. It was amazing. I had this drone footage and just had such an amazing day recording this. And it was such a surreal moment for me. But I also had this realization that this isn't going to last forever. You can't just you can't just do all the DOS work forever. And you can't be on I think went 16 holidays in my first year in business, which is just, and some of them were just like a weekend long. And it was amazing. But I thought to myself, you can't do that forever. It just doesn't work. The money isn't just going to continue coming in. Like eventually you'll lose a client, eventually you have to replace it, eventually your marketing will take a dip or whatever. And so I think for me, it was more like, let's get really far ahead now so I can then rein it back in. And to be completely honest, this lockdown, I've been working hard, but I have been like semi-retired for the last month or so. And now like this Monday was like, to me, I'm like, right, back in, you're in the zone. Yeah. So I think you can, it's also sort of like a caterpillar. You kind of like, you can give yourself like that extra room so you can sometimes allow yourself to take that time.
But that's so important.
The fact that you've got the extremes there, Jordan, with the number 16. So you're either working 16-hour days or you're taking 16 holidays a year.
Yeah, that's it.
But it's important to, I think you're a great, you're in a great position as a figure in this industry to show entrepreneurs that they don't need to be working 23 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yes, you have your periods where you are down at the page and you are working ridiculously hard and you're adapting and you're overcoming situations and you're putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. But then at the same time, we're all human, and there is a level of, sometimes, like you just said, you do need to let go a little bit, and you do need to have that time to rebalance.
I think it's, I get really frustrated by the whole hustle mentality of just like you have to work all day, every day, and for years and years, and then one day you'll have enough money to retire and you'll do this, and maybe you'll do it like 20 years earlier. Like, I don't get that. Like, I would much rather take a little bit longer and actually enjoy myself along the way. Because I think if not, you'll learn to resent your business. What's the point in that? Like you'll learn very quickly. You'll fall back into a 9 to 5 mentality, and you'll hate your job or you'll hate what you're doing because it takes you away from doing what you really do enjoy doing. So
and actually, sorry, Jordan, that comment about making a Wednesday a Saturday is, I know you reined it in, but actually having that and having that ability, and coming back to your comment earlier, having the freedom to do that if you want to do that is fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's amazing, and that's everything that I strived to achieve, is be able to do that and lose track of like almost perception of time and days and stuff, but also knowing still that you have to rein it in sometimes, but being able to do that is the dream.
Yeah. So how do you think, I mean, it's the $1 million question really, how do you think COVID-19 will affect digital marketing and your industry as a whole?
I think it's going to be an incredible, well, it already has been an incredible thing for it, but just not taking away from any of the terrible things happening in the world, but just looking at digital marketing as an industry. I think that it's first of all, it's going to make every company now innovate to be online. They're all going to want to innovate. There's going to be a huge surge, especially right now. It's happening right now as we speak. Local companies now are realizing they need to advertising again. Lots of these industries, the less strong businesses, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, some of them have actually closed down, which is horrible. I would never wish a business to shut down on anyone because someone's worked their whole life for that. But for those industries where there has been competitors shut down, there's now this opportunity for the stronger businesses within those industries to now ramp up the pressure, to start advertising more, to maybe monopolize their industry. And so I think there's plenty of opportunity around. And I think also what this has done on a global level, which I think is going to be really interesting, is I think that people are so used to working from home now. And like people now come back to terms with having to go back to work, but they've been used to being at home on furlough for the last couple of months. And they now think, I don't want to go sit in an office. So I think that companies are also going to see a big shift in allowing people to work from home more. And they're also accepting that's going to be better for the company because their employees will be in a better mental state. And they'll also have that freedom within their lives too. So I think that'll be interesting to see how that pans out too.
Yeah, I mean, James and I spoke about this in a podcast a couple of weeks ago about that kind of 9 till 5 clock in, clock out mentality, and how sometimes when you're confined to those times, you have to be productive within these times. That's not necessarily when we are at our most productive.
No, definitely not. I'm certainly not. Like, it's nice to have a routine, but having that flexibility, especially for employees, like every person in our company is able to work whatever hours they want, as long as the work gets done. I don't care when you're working.
And also you're based up in Norwich there. How's that going to affect the local economy in Norwich, where you've got perhaps up until the pandemic, people perhaps commuting, and now they're saying, actually, we're not going to do that. We're going to live further afield. We're either going to stay in Norwich or we're going to move to Norwich. What's that going to do to the local economy of Norwich?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, we've actually got a couple of good tech companies in Norwich, so we've got a lot of. I mean, I would say the majority of people, especially young people in Norwich, work in office-based jobs, and so I don't think it would have a negative impact. I mean, certainly.
Oh no, it positive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be positive for people in the way that, I mean, number one, like people won't be wasting all their money on driving around and going to the offices and everything as well. It'd be great for the environment as well, with everyone with their cars and stuff, and you won't have me bazzing about around. And I think that all, just generally speaking, it'd be great for the companies. I think in Norwich we've got this really. I want to say it reminds me of what I imagine somewhere like Manchester or Leeds being, where we've got this kind of like quite a young culture. We have quite almost like a hip culture where we're like very forward thinking. We like offices have like standing desks, and like we like to do like the big open plan environment thing. And I think
describing yourself.
So I think that's ingrained within our culture in Norwich, and so I think it's going to have some really, really positive impact. And I think I'm excited to see how it all pans out, and how at least local companies now they're opening or react to it. Because even on the weekend, I went in the city, and I'm so surprised at how many companies aren't open yet, which are actually allowed to, which is really strange.
I think one thing that could be a bit problematic is, I think in terms of laziness, you know, there's been a lot of people on furlough for the last few months that are being paid to do nothing at home. I think there's going to be a transitional period now where people have to start going back to work, where they've almost, you know, adopted some negative habits because of having nothing to do. And suddenly when they have to go back to work, you know, they don't have that drive that they may once have. And there's going to be a bit of a transitional period where people are going to be a bit more lazy.
I 100% agree with that. Definitely. I think that the whole furlough thing it could be very damaging for certain people who maybe have been paid and they literally haven't had to do anything for the last couple of months or whatever. And I think that, it's going to be interesting to see how people react to that, especially when no one's going to want to go back to. It's almost like being handed benefits for the last 2 months. It's like it's a necessary evil, because like people need that money to survive. But at the same time, when you're being given something for not doing an awful lot, like, you naturally, human nature, you can't blame these people for almost not wanting to go back for work, because like you've been given everything, and then you're getting it taken away from you again. It's like, here's the freedom, and now I'm going to take it away, and then I'm going to say, oh, you want that freedom? Start your own business.
And that's where you come in.
You hope that we obviously we do our 9-to-5 jobs and we get paid money, which is great, but we also get a sense of purpose and a sense of value. And people they've been continued to be paid, but they miss those other two parts of what they get from a job. So you do hope that they're going to feel empowered when they go back, and actually they probably haven't had the freedom we talked about earlier. They haven't been off having a great time because they've been largely restricted from doing stuff. So you hope that the boredom and the lack of boredom now
takes over.
You hope that that's going to drive them and motivate them.
It was literally only this morning I was speaking to somebody who's been on furlough, and because I think there's going to be a massive surge in people starting businesses, or at least attempting to, because there was only this morning I was talking to someone who's been on furlough, and they were saying that, look, they're going to go back to work for like a month, and then they want to plan out their business, and then they're going to quit the job and start their own company. And like this wasn't happening beforehand on like the scale that it is happening now. So I think that's going to be another massive thing, is like lots and lots of new companies starting up, which is great.
That's really interesting, though, because you'd almost think previously that, you know, something like this happening now, us going into a recession, people would think the opposite, and they feel like they need that security and that rather than starting a business in a difficult time. But yeah, that's an interesting insight.
I think it's just that way up of like that same kind of way up. I said, it's like, okay, do I want the money, or do I want like this? Like, I've spent all this time with my family. Like, do I want to go down this side? And if I have to take a tiny little cut to start off with, then I'd choose this family side. I think that's one of the decisions a lot of people are having.
Yeah. Well, I think, Jordan, that's everything from us. It's been really, really, really insightful, and thank you so much for taking the time. Was there anything you wanted to plug or anything?
No, I'm all good. If anyone ever wants to reach out and say hi, you can see me on YouTube, Jordan Platten, or Instagram, again, just Jordan Platten. I respond to absolutely everybody. So yeah, if you want any support, guidance, I'm that guy. So thank you so much for having me on, guys. By the way, pleasure to speak to you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers, guys. If that was of any use, please subscribe, give it a like. We're on Spotify and YouTube. And yeah, from James, Jordan, and I, that's it. Thank you.